You may or may not have noticed this because we really have no idea how many people have decided to jump on the Blue Jays bandwagon this shortened summer. But those Blue Jays are doing pretty well. Let's dive down that rabbit hole. Bubba O'Neill, this may be – no, check that. This is the strangest baseball summer ever. And that may be leading some people to not really be paying attention. Maybe they haven't got on board yet. Maybe they've found other things to do. We've got hockey and basketball and everything else going on that normally wouldn't be there. But the Blue Jays are doing pretty well.
Cash me in for a 60-game season for the rest of time, my friends. I love it. I think it's so exciting. And I think, we had this experience about, I'm going to say 5-6 years ago with the revival of the Blue Jays and all the moves that were made and, getting to the American League Championship. And now with this expanded playoffs, they may not even need the expanded playoffs where this Jays team are playing. Hey, got to give a lot of credit, I think, to the management crew. I think they have been under tremendous stress, the Shapiros and the Atkins, over the years because of what happened in those years before. But I think it took time to build. And I think they're still in the midst of building. And this young club, they're thrilling and exciting to watch. And I think for baseball that needs some type of excitement, these are the type of teams we need to follow in these areas.
Yeah, I think that's the excitement part, I think, is it, Bubba. And that's what's so great about the final 2 months of 2015 is that they were just – what were they, 1 under 500 at the All-Star break or something like that? Yep. And they came on at the end there in 2015, and they had players you could get excited about. First of all, they made big trades. So you always get excited when those players do well, when the prices come in, when Tulowitzki's come in, all of those kinds of things. I think still I'm waiting for, and it's been because of injury and because of Vlad's weight and because he doesn't know which foot to put forward when he's touching the bag at first base, which I can't believe. He's still stepping forward with his right foot to catch the ball. That still hasn't reached the peak that I'd like to see it. And I think that the thing that'll be really what grabs the fans. Now they got 19 games left and what's their chance now? 87% of making the playoffs, right? And they're 5 up on the team the first team that's out of it, and they only got 19 to go. You get it through, you hold that for another 4 or 5 games, and all of a sudden, if they do blow it, it'll be like 87 against Detroit and Milwaukee. It'll be that kind of full to not make it. So I think if they can get all of the key 3 young guys all back together playing, and a couple of those young pitchers, like if Rocky ends up starting or somebody like that, where you can actually see the future in this team as well, because you're seeing it sort of, but you're not really. You're seeing a whole bunch of things that are going on. You're seeing finally, Teoscar come around. But I'll tell you this. They don't have the starting pitching, and they can't catch the freaking baseball. They are really bad defensively, and I think that will do them in the long run. And that's the beauty of the 60-game season, which is what you're alluding to. Give me the 60 games anytime, because maybe those things don't add up. But I think they'll add up in the playoffs.
I think that's got a lot to do with it. There's also a third thing missing, Steve. You can talk about their fielding. You can talk about their pitching. The other thing that I think is missing is excitement. And they earn the excitement, whether they deserve it. Now, it's not a normal summer. Again, we're not in our normal social places, and there's not fans at the games. But you don't have to think back to 85 when the Jays first got good, or 87, as Steve mentions, when they blew it, or 89 when they finally won, or 92 and 93. You have to just go back to 2015, as Steve mentioned, to remember the buzz, the excitement. Everybody was talking about the Blue Jays every day. When you said, did you watch the game? Nobody had to say, what game? It was the game. I've heard almost no talk about the Blue Jays this summer.
Well, Bub's talked about this right from the start. About in almost every broadcast we've done that it's come up, Bubs has said it doesn't. I missed the fan thing, right? He's been the most vocal of us on all of that, and I think I haven't on this, particularly on baseball. It's made me really, really focus, and basketball too. But I think I'm going to miss it now for that very reason you're saying. I want to see the hockey fans discovering baseball again. Like it was so obvious in 2015, and you'd say, "Oh, you lovable dolts," like that. You'd say, "Oh, it's so cute watching you get so into this as if it's hockey."
And Bubba, I'll go to you on this, but shouldn't that be easier this summer? Because the hockey games are on either right after or right before. You always talk about shows leading into or following shows for ratings boosters. This should have been the time hockey fans and basketball fans would have found it easier to find baseball.
Well, I think it's in competition right now. You got so much competition going on that would not normally be there right now. Let's be honest. I mean, we're talking about the beginning of September right now, Scott, and I think baseball would be in the forefront of everyone's mind with the National Football League starting this week. They would normally have the Raptors to compete with. They would normally have basically the conference finals in hockey right now. So everything's getting chopped up into a piece of pie right now. But I still believe that there is a buzz with this Blue Jays team because I think of the way that I think it's an attractive product right now because they're all very young. They were active in the trade deadline, picking up, I think, 5 different players. I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit there. I think the starting pitching, I think, has been a big surprise to me. Hyun-Jin Ryu has been fantastic with the exception of one start, which they ended up winning. They've had these incredible comeback victories. And you've got these, I mean, Bichette was coming out of the gate. Teoscar Hernandez, you know what, quite honestly, MVP-like numbers. And we're seeing these young guys, Gurriel, and all these guys are kind of growing at the same time. And it does remind me, I am old enough to remember what it was like in that mid-'80s to late 80s where you had this young product. And I think people are attracted to the young guns.
I think they are, but I just want to see them all playing at one time. There's been almost all through this. There's been 2 of them out at any one time, just about, right? So, and I would agree the potential for the starting pitching is there, but the numbers really aren't compared. It's their bullpen that's been doing it, and that's where.
And you're right, and the bullpen has been unbelievable. So
and that's where you said let's credit Atkins, and I think you're right because he's put this with a bunch of guys named Bob. Right there, I mean, he went out and he got too many guys named Bob, and if you do that and it works out well, if you get the right thing going, they seem to have done that.
But that's given an opportunity to see some of these kids, and they're actually coming back. And you're getting a guy like Ken Giles that's coming back to be the closer, which is going to make Montoya's job a little bit easier. And Scott, to your point, I think you're totally correct. Montoya has done, in some ways, a horrible job of, and I don't know how you do this in a 60-game season, remind the guys of the fundamentals, because we've seen so many seriously flawed things in the infield, base running errors. But yet, guys, here they are in a situation where in the American League will have 8 teams make the playoffs. They're 5th right now. Right? Yeah. And that's with all these flaws and young kids, and who knows where goes for the next couple of years.
You don't want to be a fly ball pitcher on this team right now, and that affects your pitching eventually in key games. You don't want to be
before we fully deify Atkins and Shapiro. Let me just toss a little bucket of cold water on here because I don't believe for a second with the team as constituted and with the injuries, but that's out of their control. But even as it's constituted, if this 162 game season and the bullpen was getting this kind of work, they would not make the playoffs because the bullpen will collapse before that happens. This is a perfect team by the looks of it for this 60-game season, and I know that's what they're playing in, a 60-game season, so you can only judge them on that.
That's it. This is a stopgap season.
It is, and so I'm not convinced yet that if we extrapolate this and put them next year into a full 162 games, I'm not sure we see the same place in the standings. We might. And
let me tell you why I disagree with that right now. I think the Blue Jays, right, as they have over the years at particular times, they have positioned this growth at the same time where the Boston Red Sox are no good, overpaid, and they're in a rebuilding project. Baltimore are horrendous right now and scrapping to just try and rebuild as well too. The New York Yankees, for all the money that has been spent, and all the veterans that they have on this team, are somewhat underperforming, and they're kind of a home run hitting team with not a lot of pitching. So with the exception of Tampa Bay, which this team is kind of modeled after in some ways, they're kind of I think they're in position right now to have a little run for the next 2 or 3 years, while those other teams are struggling. Because we're always saying you got to compete against the Red Sox and the Yankees. Well, at least one of them for sure is not a factor.
Well, depending on how the starters that they've signed to anchor that 5 go, they could be in a position at the end of this year that they're willing to, and the players coming here might be willing to get a guy that makes a difference, a guy that really makes a difference. Not your 7th starter, not your 6th and 5th starter, but maybe a 2. Those kinds of things. They might be in that kind of position but the problem is if you have a whole bunch of players, a whole bunch of prospects, they don't all come at the same speed, or even the rule is 1 in 3, right? That if you have 3 superstars, it's more for pitching than anything else. One of them stays with you. One of them ends up being a star somewhere else, and one of them is maybe in a different role with you. Well, you could look at that if the Jays have 6 core guys, and I think they do, 6 young guys that aren't pitchers. Then probably we can expect that 2 of them will develop, 2 of them will be so-so, and 2 of them will end up somewhere else or out of the game. And that's about all you can hope for.
Let me ask you a question, and I don't want to go too deep into this. It's to make a point, but if somebody in baseball batted .400 this season, would we consider that to be a legitimate .400 season?
No, of course not. You can't.
So, and I agree with you. Nobody would say, we'd say, look, he batted .400, but there would always be a giant asterisk beside it because you can get hot for enough time for less than half a season. Look, George Brett, Steve, you were around. What was Brett batting at the All-Star break the year he almost hit .400? Like .430 or something by the time.
Yeah, .430, and Olerud was flirting. He was at .398 through 100 games or something.
But it's a long season.
Yeah.
And it's a long season. And so, a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, who's injured now, but who's been amazing for the Blue Jays, do we believe that he is a guy that would be playing like this over the course of the entire season?
Well, I think at the moment that's kind of irrelevant.
No, but I'm talking about when we talk about this team. They're doing great this year. There's no question. I'm looking down the road. Do we extrapolate him and say this is a guy who's suddenly going to be a 45 home run guy every year? I'm happy about this year. I'm excited about this year. I'm as I say, I'm looking a year down the road and I'm saying I'm not sure that the Jays we're seeing this year are what the real Jays are, but I don't really know.
Well, it's impossible to say that. That's why it becomes almost irrelevant because it's like it's a 3 drunk guys kind of discussion. Because
you are at this time of day, not me. I've only had coffee so far.
And the guy I'll go to is Bautista, and I'll go to Edward Encarnacion. Both guys have these incredible years, and we'd be sitting here saying the same thing. Well, they had a great 3 months here to get hot, to put them in the playoffs, that kind of thing. But it turned out to be a lot more than that, didn't it? So you can't tell with everybody who's going to.
No, you can't.
Some will get on a roll, some won't. It's like the playoffs. There's lots of great players that do great in the baseball playoffs, and they get big deals because of it, but they never end up quite doing the same again for the very reason you're saying. Baseball is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and this is a sprint. And I think that, again, speaks to what Bub says, is that you got to give these guys some credit because they recognize what it is. They're not tied to a bunch of guys here. Other than how many guys are they tied to? Except they're young guys and the
5 or 6,
and the starter they brought in. So they're not really tied to a bunch of stuff here.
Right, and I think
there's a lot of disposable parts here.
And I think that's why they've maneuvered themselves and positioned themselves where they have not been hurt. A lot of the guys they picked up for low-level prospects, and they didn't give away a lot of things. So that's why I think they got to be commended because they're providing some excitement with the product, adding to some of these young kids. And to your point there, Scott, about, guys like, is this a mirage for guys like Teoscar Hernandez? Kind of feel like guys like Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. have been kind of right there. And we're kind of, for a couple of years saying, you know what, these guys are tremendous, higher aged prospects that are on the verge of doing something special. And I think we're kind of watching it right now.
Well, I think one of the problems they're going to find, and this is partly, I think, what Scott might be hinting at, is that they're starting to have too many guys to hide in the lineup defensively. I mean, you can't – are you kidding? You're going to play Gurriel 120 games in the outfield? He's going to give up. Like, he can't get the ball. Like, did you see the one last night?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
I catch that running backwards with my eyes closed, and so does anybody here.
I'm just going to say this, and I don't know because I haven't been there, but I mean, there is, I don't know if it's a complaint, but there was a worry when they were going to play at Salem Field, and we've seen this with some visiting teams as well, too, that as the games get into the nighttime, the lighting there is a little suspect,
Home field
And,
advantage.
and outfielders are struggling with fly balls out there. So I think we saw a couple of Yankees last night that kind of, fumble up some balls as well too. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's a true reflection of the way the guy plays the outfield. But I think he's locked into the outfield right now.
Well, he has to be. You got to have that bat the way it's going.
And they have so many infielders, and then we got Martin, who's on the way up as well too. So I think he's out there for the outfield for good for now.
It is. It's an interesting story. There is absolutely no question the Jays have done a lot better this year than a lot of people expected. The question is how many people are watching. And just before we started this, we said we really don't know because haven't seen any reports of TV numbers. So it's really hard to say whether people have really latched onto this. Remember, in 2015, those TV numbers got up to over 1 million a game down the stretch when the team was really, I don't know if the word is lovable, but certainly you couldn't turn away and everybody was into it. I don't know the numbers would be expected to be that high. I don't know what the numbers are.
Well, the Raps could go out. Don't forget,
exactly.
Canada's team is the Raptors. And I mean, they're so far ahead of the Blue Jays right now in being Canada's team. So if they go out tonight or if they go out tonight, then or in 2 games, then all of a sudden it's a pretty clear slate. There's no CFL.
I agree with you. I agree tremendously with you because I feel like for whatever reason that a lot of people are, they're the defending NBA champions. Why wouldn't they be getting the biggest piece of the pie right now? And with NHL, I mean, poor NHL in its sense, it's reached its conference championship, but now the true regionality of that sport is really kicking in right now because a lot of people just aren't excited about the New York Islanders and Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, they're a good story, but they're a million miles away. And they're playing in the bubble in Edmonton. So I don't think their interest is there. So if the Raptors are out tonight, I think the Blue Jays take a monumental leap in terms of people going, hey, wow, this team could make the playoffs.
But Radley's right. Why don't we know about this? I mean, part of it is because we can't see the people getting excited, but where's the numbers?
Well, I can see Geddy Lee sitting behind home plate getting excited every night. That's if the Raptors go out in Game 6, then maybe everyone will tune to the Blue Jays, or maybe we'll all just start talking about future free agent acquisition, Giannis Antetokounmpo coming to the Raptors, and that'll suck up all the air in the room. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk about that one of these days soon. Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear from you. Our Twitter handles have been on the screen. You can contact any one of us. We'd love to hear from you. Also, subscribe down below. You can hit the button down there. We will talk to you again soon.